5 national championships, 5 gold medals, 42 years of sustained excellence. Welcome to Leadership Lessons from the GOAT, a special series on the Ed Leader podcast featuring your host, Dr. Rob Jackson, with special guest, JJ Jackson. Let's go.
Hi, friends. Welcome to the Ed Leader podcast. I'm your host, Rob Jackson, and I want to thank you for spending time with me today. I am absolutely excited to continue with this special series, Leadership Lessons from the GOAT. Your feedback has been absolutely outstanding, and I appreciate how much you are encouraging me and my son JJ in this work. We certainly enjoy having the opportunity to bring together our passions, our joint passion for Duke basketball and Coach Mike Krzyzewski, my passion for leadership, and JJ's passion for sports in general. We're having a lot of fun, and I certainly am glad that you are having fun as well. Speaking of fun,
let's go.
JJ, I cannot believe we are in this moment before the season started, as we were talking about all that was when we found out that Coach K was going to be retiring and this was his final season, despite all of our bluster and our positivity and thinking about the possibility of Coach K leading his team to the opportunity to play in the Final Four, maybe a chance to play for the national championship. I don't know if we really dared to hope that would happen. Man, how has this last stretch of the season, the last time we talked on the podcast was just after the ACC tournament. How has this silly season, the madness of March, gone for you?
It's been unbelievable to watch, Dad. It's awesome that here we are. Duke is going to the Final Four in the last ride of the GOAT, and that we've been doing this special podcast series to kind of go along hand in hand with that. The timing is absolutely excellent that it's come together in this fashion. And, you know, I don't let this be known publicly at all, Dad, on my podcast or just talking with friends or when I do various interviews about the Duke basketball team. But I get nervous during the games, right? And as you know, only my family knows that. Only my family knows that. And I can be a little pessimistic from time to time during the games when things aren't going in Duke's favor. But they never let us down in March. And again, Coach K going to his 13th Final Four. More importantly, this team, with all the pressure we talked about of having former players in the building, 100 some odd of them, watching the final game in Cameron for Coach K, and having a bit of a letdown, for them to respond the way that they have and be playing as the most talented team in the country. It's so surreal. It's so special.
It is absolutely special. And I want to get into what we've witnessed over the last 2 weeks in the NCAA tournament. And as we do that, I want to set the stage. So we got together for the last podcast, and the theme of that podcast, again from Coach K's book, Leading from the Heart, was focus on the task at hand. And so we started talking about the team would need to focus. Today, we'd like to pull out a chapter from the book called Game Day. And I love that as it goes into the section of the book on the postseason, his leadership lessons are broken down to preseason, regular season, postseason. And as he goes into it, he starts with this quote. He says, "Like the springtime, our team is beginning anew. This is the time of year when we not only must be playing our best basketball, but when we should be our most enthusiastic about playing." And so set the stage for us. Selection Sunday comes. We find out that Duke is back in the tournament after a year not being in the tournament. Walk us through that first weekend.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, Duke ended up in the worst possible spot for them to be in. You talk about the number 1 seeds. Gonzaga was the number 1 overall seed in the tournament. The fact that Duke was a 2 seed means that they were the worst 2 seed, and they were going to have to be paired with the number 1 seed in Gonzaga. And then you're also paired with a really good 3 seed and a really good 4 seed as it kind of snakes back and forth as you go throughout your bracket. So it was going to be a tough task for Duke. They were going to play in Greenville, South Carolina for their first round games against Cal State Fullerton, and then the winner of either Michigan State or Davidson. And while you kind of felt like, okay, this Duke team's going to be able to get the job done, the last time Duke had games in South Carolina, they didn't go as favorably for Duke. Jason Tatum and Luke Kennard were the stars of a team in 2017 that lost in the round of 32 to South Carolina. The Gamecocks, somehow, some way, as a lower seeded team, got to play in their backyard against Duke in an NCAA tournament game. And I know that's no excuse because Duke fans travel everywhere, but those were kind of the memories that a lot of Duke fans had, was their last trip to South Carolina. And boy, Duke found a way to win pretty handedly against Cal State Fullerton, and then had their biggest test of the entire season against Michigan State in the second half. It really started to unravel for Duke. AJ Griffin, who's been one of their most important players all season long, got hurt with 6 minutes left to play. Michigan hit a three-pointer and some free throws to go up by 5 with 5 minutes and 10 seconds to play in the second half. And then Duke just responded. Jeremy Roach took over the basketball game at the point guard spot. There was big timeouts, and the team decided to go all in. Like, we have nothing else to lose, was the message from Coach Ken, and the players echoed it themselves. They came back and won, and what a convincing win it was to pick it up over Michigan State, a Spartans team that we kind of talk history. Duke has played Michigan State a ton in the NCAA tournament. Tom Izzo, a really good coach in his own right, having been to 8 Final Fours himself, and Duke was able to pick up the victory. And the last time they played Michigan State, by the way, Dad, the last NCAA tournament game that Duke had played before this year was back in 2019. No tournament in 20. Duke did not make it in 21. And in the Elite Eight game, that very Michigan State team, whose freshmen and sophomores were still on this year's team because of extra COVID years, they beat Zion Williamson and RJ Barrett and Cam Reddish to go to the Final Four, and Duke got to avenge that loss a couple of weeks ago.
I tell you what, there's so many storylines throughout the tournament, which is why we love basketball so much and love the basketball national championship so much. And so setting that stage, and you did such a great job with setting the first 2 rounds, the round of 64 and the round of 32, Duke is placed in the West. Of course, the West is they're there because they're the lowest number 2 seed, and it might have been better, at least on paper, to have been the highest 3 seed than the lowest 2 seed. So they go to the West. What's their history coming out of the West, JJ?
Not great. They have not great at all, Pops. I say that when you're in the West region as Duke, they're never really that low, below a 5 seed in really bad years. You'll see that from time to time with Duke basketball. But going into the West region, in the first round, that doesn't really matter. You're still have regional games that are kind of close to your area, whether that be somewhere like Greenville, South Carolina, or Charlotte, or Winston-Salem, or Raleigh, or various places that have hosted NCAA tournament games before. But when you actually get to the second weekend and you have the regional championships, that's the Sweet 16 and then the Elite Eight, Duke had never won a game in the Pacific time zone in the NCAA tournament. And I didn't even know that, Dad. And I'm as big of a Duke basketball fan as they come. And the production team at CBS airing the Sweet 16 game decides to tell the greater basketball world this stat with 3 minutes to go in a 1-point basketball game. And the announcer's jinx is real. I do play-by-play. I'm a broadcaster myself. I'm very aware of its powers. And the idea that a production team put that graphic on the screen that Duke had never before won in the Pacific time zone, that added to the pessimism, Dad. That was for sure.
For our listeners, I will tell you, I can't help but laugh as I think about 20-something years of Duke games with Joshua and him pacing in front of the TV from an early age and going back and forth. And I'm sure we were texting back and forth during the games, and I could just imagine you pacing at that moment when that graphic flies up there. And of course, we know Duke being Durham, North Carolina, being as far east in the country as it is, that anytime Duke is placed in the West, they really don't have a great seed. And so they're going to be playing stronger teams. And so in a moment going into the national tournament, when we just talked about Duke's needs to focus on the task at hand, as part of our book study and this book from Coach K, they're placed in the West, and they face Cal State Fullerton, they face Michigan State, and they have made it to the Sweet 16. And so we're incredibly excited, except that they're going into the Sweet 16. What are we seeing there, buddy?
They're not favored, that's for sure. Texas Tech was the favored team.
Wait, Duke's not favored?
Yeah, Duke is not favored. Duke is not favored. The basketball players over the years, Quinn Cook being one of them, like to let the world know that Duke is never the underdog, and that's become a slogan in itself and a T-shirt, I'm sure, for Duke fans, which is true in the grand scheme of things when they're on the floor and you're the opponent. I've never been an opponent against a Duke basketball team, but I can only speak from what I've heard and been told and then observed. No one likes to play Duke when you see those 4 letters across their chest, because you know you're going to be in for a dogfight and probably going to come out on the losing end, given how great the program has been over the years. But yeah, going into that matchup, Texas Tech was being praised over and over and over again, and rightfully so. This does not need to be anti-Texas Tech, because I mentioned the last time Duke made the NCAA tournament was in 2019 and went all the way to the Elite Eight. Texas Tech made it to the Final Four that year, and they went to overtime in the national championship game against Virginia and had an opportunity to win the whole thing. They've been a really good program. Their coach, Chris Beard, left Texas Tech, a Big 12 school.
Show me the money.
For Texas in the same conference, in the same state. You're exactly right, for a larger contract just this past offseason. That storyline, not as well talked about because Roy Williams retired in the middle of the summer. And then Coach K decided, I'm going to retire at the end of this year. And so the Texas Tech team still has really talented players on the roster. Anyway, Duke was not favored. Texas Tech was favored to win in the Sweet 16.
Texas Tech, and we've talked about in this podcast special series, and we certainly appreciate all of the praise and enthusiasm from the listeners, and we thank you for all of your feedback, and we've certainly had a lot of fun with it. Texas Tech is being heralded as the winner of the game before the game ever tips off, and they're being heralded because they have such a phenomenal defense. And we talked about on this podcast the necessity to face adversity, and that we would face adversity. And so Duke University, led by Coach K, is facing this adversity of a team that has this incredible defense and may have been the best in the country, JJ, and they're coming into that game ready to face adversity. How does that game go for them? Play this game out for us.
Yeah, a top 5 defense for sure, and Texas Tech in the entire country. Duke's a top 10 offense in the entire country, and at times when they're knocking down shots from the outside, their numbers go up. The only reason they're not higher up is because this Duke basketball team doesn't take 3-point shots. When they do, it's not the best, but they really don't have to take threes because they're so good at just getting to the rim. And if the closer you are, the percentage goes up. Take more of those shots. But against Texas Tech, Duke had a back and forth game with the Red Raiders, got off to a slower start. They trailed 10-2 right out of the gates. I phoned it in my head for a matter of moments. Commercials are exhausting for me, knowing that the score isn't changing at all during those times. But then they came back, and they were able to trail by 4 at halftime, and then kind of went into a back and forth stretch. And then against the top defense in the entire country left in the tournament, in the last 8 minutes of the game, Duke did not miss a single shot. In the last 8 minutes against the top defense left in the tournament, Duke did not miss a single shot. I repeated it again because it's that impressive. And they were able to walk away with a victory. Their sophomore point guard, Jeremy Roach, iced the game once again. Paula Banchero had 22 points, more than anyone else on the floor that night, and proved to people why he's going to be a top 3 pick in this year's NBA draft, and they picked up a big win.
So they faced that adversity. They certainly focused on the task at hand, 2 of the leadership tenets we've talked about. They win this Sweet 16 game, and yay, you win. Here is the prize for you. You get to play in the Elite Eight. Certainly, we're excited about being able to play in the Elite Eight, but who's waiting for us there in the Elite Eight?
surprisingly not Gonzaga, the number one overall seed in the country. Gonzaga was really, really tested in the round of 32 against Memphis and Penny Hardaway, who was their head coach now, and a lot of people know him from his days as an NBA star. And Memphis had a double-digit lead at halftime against Gonzaga in the second round of the tournament.
Wow.
And they blew it. Gonzaga started making shots, but more importantly, Memphis just got afraid of them. I don't know what happened. It fell all apart for the Memphis Tigers. And so Gonzaga moves on to the round of 32. They play a really big and physical Arkansas team out of the SEC. Got Gonzaga players and their stars like Chet Holmgren in foul trouble, and then Arkansas found a way to win. So Duke has a matchup with Arkansas, a team they had not seen in the NCAA tournament since 1994, before I was born and existed, in the national championship game. That was in Grant Hill's senior year, and he was getting set to play in his third national championship game as a player, as a student athlete. And unfortunately for Grant Hill, he lost that game to Nolan Richardson, who coached the Arkansas Razorbacks, and their 40 minutes of hell was their brand of basketball as it was branded back then. And so they play Arkansas in the Elite Eight matchup. Grant Hill is now the broadcaster for the game, which was awesome to hear and kind of listen to. And back and forth, the game kind of went in the first half. And then at the end of the first half, Duke pulled away, and they had their best performance of the entire tournament.
So as they're going into this game against Arkansas, a team that they last played, and the student athletes playing in the game weren't alive at that time either, JJ, not just you, the players who were playing, but it was a team that stole Grant Hill's third national championship. It was in the middle of or towards the end of a phenomenal Final Four run, and we'll talk about that for Coach K. But going into that game, I want to pull back out a leadership tenet from Coach K. He says in the book, make sure you have a clear head when you go into a game. That way, you'll be more likely to react well to whatever unpredictable situation might occur. And so you took us through halftime. We're up, we're feeling good about ourselves, and then we tip off the second half. How's the second half start off for us?
Yeah, a couple of minutes of back and forth basketball with the lead really not moving too much. Arkansas would make a basket. Duke would make a basket. Razorbacks would make a basket. Blue Devils would make a basket. And then there was a stretch where Arkansas went on a run, and they cut the lead all the way down to 5. And Coach K called a timeout.
So in that timeout, JJ, and I want to go right back to the book, because he says in the book, business, like basketball, is a game of adjustments, so be ready to adjust. And so Arkansas, this incredible defensive team, obviously a great team because they're playing in the Elite Eight, a team that has had success. They have gone on a run. They have pulled within 5 points of Duke. Coach K, in his wisdom, calls a timeout, gets his team around him, encourages them, gives them what they need emotionally, is a true leader in that moment.
And in that timeout, he brought the team together and reminded them that they still have big goals to obtain. This Arkansas team is really good. And just because you had a good first half doesn't mean the game's over yet. You got to close out the game.
They leave the timeout, head back onto the floor. And what happens at that point?
They respond by going on a 10-0 run to make it a 15-point lead, to which Arkansas needs to call a timeout. Duke went to zone defense. Duke's basketball team is known and lauded for their length. They are a huge basketball team. Their man in the middle, Mark Williams, is 7'2" with a 7'7" wingspan, just a monster on the inside, and made it really difficult for the Razorbacks to play offense. So a 10-0 run to make it a 15-point lead. It never got closer than 8 points again. Duke had as large of a lead as 18 points in the second half. And the Arkansas made a couple of shots at the end there to pretty up the score, but Duke still won by 9 and went on to the Final Four.
And off to the Final Four they go. And as we're starting to close in on the end of our conversation for this episode of the special series, Leadership Lessons from the GOAT, with my son, JJ Jackson, host of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast, I want to set us up for the Final Four. We'll finish up the series following the Final Four, and we still have our sights on 6, and we hope that we're celebrating a 6th national championship. But before we get there, we have a big Final Four game, a game that probably couldn't be any bigger. It's almost like a made-for-TV movie when you think his last year with all of his success and the game in front of him is his arch rival. I believe, JJ, they've played, Coach K has coached against UNC 100 times. Is that correct?
This will be the 100th meeting of the series. Yes, he's got 50 wins against North Carolina and 49 defeats. So after the Final Four, he will either be an even 500 winning percentage, or what we're hoping for from the Duke perspective, he's 51 and 49 all time against North Carolina and can go out on top.
Absolutely. And which is not what we expected when he first got to Duke, and he was struggling. Of course, they were coached by the legendary Dean Smith at that time, and later would have Roy Williams, no slouch himself. And so they're getting ready for the Final Four. JJ, set the stage for the Final Four for Coach K. How many times has he been there, and how does that compare to other great coaches in the history of college basketball?
Yeah, he made history this weekend, Dad, as he clinched his 13th Final Four appearance. He had 12. He got that 12th in 2015 when Duke went on to win the national championship. He tied John Wooden when he did that. And so John Wooden, of course, the UCLA legendary coach, had 12 Final Four appearances and 10 national championship wins. Coach K got 13, so he jumped in front of him in that metric, that stat. He's got 5 championships and a chance to win his 6th coming up this weekend, and a Final Four on Saturday and a championship game the following Monday. And in terms of the other legendary coaches that are out there, Dean Smith, who we mentioned, went to 11 Final Fours, only won 2 national championships with those 11 Final Four appearances. You've got somebody like Roy Williams, who had 9 Final Fours, 3 national championships. He went to 4 as the Kansas head coach and 5 as the North Carolina head coach. Tom Izzo, I mentioned his 8 Final Four appearances a little bit earlier. He's one of the highest guys there. And then the other 2 Final Four coaches this weekend, Jay Wright and Bill Self, they're no stranger. They've both been to now 4 Final Fours each, and they've won a couple of national championships themselves too. So it's a stacked field, but Coach K is on top of everyone with the number of championships and Final Fours that he's been to.
I tell you what, it's just so impressive. And I'm going to ask you for one more stat as we kind of walk away and get ready for the Final Four game, and we hope a national championship game. His 13 visits to the Final Four, the number of victories he has in the NCAA tournament. If we had a brand new coach going in to coach men's basketball today, how long would it take them to rack up the number of tournament victories that he's been able to notch during his career?
A really long time would be the short answer. But I know you're amazed at the stat that I saw this on Twitter from Brian Ives, who's covered North Carolina for a number of years. And he posted that if you look at the traditional tournament right now, 6 games, they've expanded it to 68 teams. And so sometimes, like UCLA did last year, you're playing in the first 4 and you would need to win 7 games to win it all in the NCAA tournament. But if we just look at the traditional 64 team spread, if a coach started tomorrow, or if they won 16 straight national championships, they still would not have more NCAA tournament victories than Coach K has. Now, granted, I will say, Dad, from that perspective, I would take 16 national championships over the 5 that Coach K currently has. But as a man that has 101 NCAA tournament wins in Coach K, it is a record that will not be broken by anybody. And that's one he's going to be able to hold on to for a long time.
It's just crazy to think about. It is so crazy to think about, 16 consecutive national championships. And so as we come to the end of this episode on the special series of the Ed Leader podcast, Leadership Lessons from the GOAT, and we prepare for the Final Four weekend and then into our final episode where, again, we'll be telling one more story about JJ and the GOAT and time spent with him. We're looking forward to that story. But I want to leave it with this final quote from Coach K for this episode. Coach K says in the book, Leading from the Heart, I coach by feel, I follow my heart. And so for leaders, regardless of where we are leading, whether that's on a basketball court, whether that's in business and industry, or as an ed leader leading in education, we can do no better than following our heart, particularly when we have a heart for others, a heart for service, and a heart for making a difference. Speaking of having a heart, JJ, you have a huge heart, and I love that about you. Thank you for spending time with me today. Thank you for spending time with our listeners on the Ed Leader podcast. Final message for the team and for the fan base.
Absolutely. I hope that Duke finds a way to win this. I'm feeling optimistic. I think they can get it done. The game hasn't started yet, so the pessimism hasn't kicked in. But I know I'm going to be seeing a lot of the best shade of blue, and I know that good things are coming for this Duke basketball team. And I truly do think we could be in for a storybook ending for Coach K's career, which is absolutely awesome. And then knowing the audience, Dad, you love to give shout-outs to all my listeners in your daily life, and you love to let people know what I'm getting into in my life. I want to speak to the Ed Leader listeners as well, because I know it's a lot of people that are in the schoolhouses in the state of North Carolina. Enjoy these next few days, because those are my fondest memories of being your son, Dad, being the son of an educator, and knowing that I could walk the hall of any school in the state of North Carolina in March, in the first weekend of March, and then also in February, and really 365 days a year, and see the split in shades of blue. And the fact that we're getting that again this week is terrific. So shout out to all the students and teachers at North Carolina schools.
I tell you what, you're exactly right. I was laughing because that certainly goes back to my days as a student in North Carolina, particularly during the ACC tournament, when you'd walk up and down the halls and see all the TVs playing in the classrooms. That's probably not happening in any other state. Maybe we shouldn't admit to that, but that is life in North Carolina, culture and tradition we don't want to shy away from.
Let's have some fun this weekend, Dad. I love you.
I love you too, and thank you for another great episode. And as your little brother would say,
let's go.
Thank you for listening to the Ed Leader Podcast. Please subscribe to the podcast and consider leaving a review with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts so that we may continue to grow the Ed Leader community. We hope that you have enjoyed your time with Dr. Jackson. Until next time.